person and online, you're very welcome. It's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Alison Young, who's visiting us from the University of Cambridge. Professor Young is Mr. David Williams' Chair of Public Law. She's a professor in public law, specialist in authority and constitutional theory and public law, mainly in the UK, but also in Europe, and especially before the event. So, the recent past, don't talk about the UK, let's not talk about those events. Today, what we are here to discuss with you is graduate study, postgraduate study in Oxford and in Cambridge. The reason why we're not just focusing on Cambridge is because Alison herself was a graduate student in Oxford and then spent a good deal of her career as a lecturer and then professor of public law at Oxford. So we are very privileged indeed to have Alison's wealth of experience and knowledge and generosity today. And Alison has been a mentor and a role model for many students in Oxford and in Cambridge, myself included, at the master's and PhD level. And so please make use of the time that we have for Q&A to ask Alison whatever you have in mind for your thoughts about Oxford and Cambridge. I'm here, I guess, not just because I'm hosting Alison in faculty, but because I'm survivor on Cambridge, the Masters and the PhD, which was a marvelous time, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have for me as well. So, Alison, I'll hand over to you to give your thoughts, and then we can open up for questions.
Thanks, Jelena. So thank you for that very kind and generous introduction. I will try my best not to be too Oxbridge, however you perceive that, and to give you accurate accounts of what it's like. So as Jelena has explained, I'm currently a professor at Cambridge. I've been at Cambridge for about 5 years now. Before that, I was at Oxford for a long time. I'm going for around 20 years. Okay, we'll stick with that. I got very scared as one of your professors here made it clear that I taught them on the BCL 15 years ago, and that made me quite scared. So I've been around quite a while. I also did my BCL and DPhil at Oxford. So I've experienced being a student at Oxford as well as teaching at both Oxford and Cambridge. I've taught on both the BCL and the LLM at Cambridge, and I've also been involved in admissions at both Oxford and Cambridge for the LLM and for the PhD and DPhil. So any questions you've got about the process, I probably will have an answer somewhere, and so I should be able to answer any questions you have about how it works and why you should do this. So some general ideas of why you should think about going from Australia, where this is your winter, and I'm looking at this going, this is a lovely summer's day. Yeah, if you like the cold, depends. So I just wanted to first set out general reasons of why you might want to think about going to either Oxford or Cambridge. Then I want to try and give you some of the more specific differences between the two that you might want to think about, and then hopefully throw it out to questions. So I don't want to talk to you too long, but give you an opportunity to ask me some questions. So why would you think about going to jolly old England and visiting, studying in either Oxford or Cambridge in particular? The standard response I tend to get is Harry Potter, which don't go for Harry Potter reasons, okay? That is not a good reason to go to either Oxford or Cambridge. Yes, Harry Potter was filmed in Oxford, and yes, lots of bits of Cambridge also do look very Harry Potter-esque, but that's not the reason to go there, okay? So yes, it's quite pretty and quite nice, but that's not the main reason for wandering along. More pragmatically, if you look at what's on offer there, there's some very good reasons for going. So if you look at whatever world rankings you have, generally in terms of universities, or specifically for law, you're always going to find Oxford and Cambridge in the top 5, if not the top 3. And they keep vying for which one's the best or second best universities. So they are good universities, not just because I'd say that because I was there, but if you look at different rankings, you can see they really are good universities. Not only are they good universities, but they've both got very quite large and established postgraduate communities. So Oxford's PhD postgraduate community is larger than Cambridge's equivalent PhD program, but both have very big master's programs. They attract students on either the LLM or BCL from around the globe. So you won't just meet people from England. In fact, you'll probably meet fewer people from England on those courses than you will from Australia, Canada, New Zealand, India, South Africa. So it's a big sort of magnet for those who've been versed in some way, either in legal courses that have been English speaking or that are focused predominantly on common law approaches to law. So there's a big draw of people from all over the world. There's a lot from Hong Kong and Singapore, Malaysia as well. So it's a big, wide global community that you get at both Oxford and Cambridge. You do get quite a lot of well-established experts. It can be quite scary wandering around Oxford and Cambridge the first time and thinking, I've read their textbook, I've read their textbook, they wrote that textbook. So you do get a lot of really good expertise there as well. So it really is a good magnet for very, very good legal education from good experts in a big global community. So Oxford, in case you're wondering, has the largest English-speaking common law PhD program in the world. Okay, so that's why you get so many PhD students in Oxford. Cambridge's PhD community is smaller. I'll think about the different advantages and disadvantages of those different kinds of aspects. So that's my general sales pitch. If you needed more persuasion, it's often easier to get funding to go abroad than it is to stay in your own country. Don't ask me why, but this does seem to be. We find exactly the same in England. You'll get more funding to go abroad to do a PhD than you would if you stay in England. So this could be pragmatic as well. Postgraduate legal education is expensive. Funding is not always easy to find. So if you've got more funding opportunities to go abroad, use that. Look at good places to go and maximize and capitalize on where you can go. And it's always very good to go to another legal jurisdiction, not just because you learn about that jurisdiction, but also because you will meet people from a whole wide range of jurisdictions, which can enhance your legal understanding of your own legal system, as well as the one that you go and study in. So that's my general sales pitch over. What are the differences and similarities between the two? So I'm going to try and break this up into thinking about the admissions process, the nature of the course. So I'm mostly thinking about comparing the LLM and BCL, your progression. So how easy is it to move on from doing either the LLM or BCL on to doing the different PhD programs there, and then thinking about the specific community and the broader kind of community aspects of living in either Oxford or Cambridge. In terms of admissions, they're pretty much the same. Both are highly competitive. You need a first, and you need normally to be in the equivalent of the top 10% of your degree cohort. So they're both highly competitive. It's not necessarily easy to get in, but if you are an individual who's predicted to be in that top sort of 5 to 10% and is definitely going to be getting first, then either of them are viable. There's no real difference in terms of admission requirements to go to either the Cambridge LLM or the Oxford BCL. Okay, so they're both fairly competitive. The admissions process for both is predominantly written. So neither of them is going to interview you. They're going to look at your dossier, they're going to look at your references, your transcript, and that is what is going to be used in order to accept you. Both of them also have an admissions process that might look quite odd if you're coming from anywhere other than Oxford or Cambridge, because you'll apply to a centralized system to the university and you'll get an acceptance saying, well done, you've been accepted on the course. You think, oh, great, fantastic. When do I start? But then you'll have to go through yet another process to get accepted by a particular college. Okay? So don't ignore that stage. And sort of think, oh yeah, I've got a place, hurrah, I can ignore all emails from Oxford and Cambridge, because they'll then start sending you emails about colleges offering you a place. And then you have to think about, do I want to go to this particular college or not? At postgraduate level, there's very little reason to choose one college over another, because the LLM and BCL courses are centralized and PhD supervision is centralized and organized by the faculty. So that really becomes an element when you're choosing a college as to what type of college environment you would like. Most college elements for postgraduates will be organising what we call the MCR, middle common room or middle combination room, depending on whether you're in Oxford or Cambridge, which then will organise sort of social events. You'll dine in your college. There's dining abilities in college. It's like a kind of hall of residence with other things attached. Whereas for the undergrads, it becomes much more important because the colleges provide small group teaching. At postgrad level, it's more about thinking about an environment, a culture you'll feel you can fit in. So most people at postgrad level will just choose some colleges, wait for a college to give them acceptance, and just accept that college because that tends to be the process that you go through. The warning is don't think, hooray, I've got it, and then stop, because then you might miss the information about colleges and suddenly find yourself collegeless, which can't happen. So you'll just be randomly allocated a college at the end. And you might not know where you're going. You didn't arrive at Heathrow, get the relevant bit to either Oxford or Cambridge, and think, now where? Which was that college again? So do be aware of the kind of combination of faculty and college working through. In terms of the courses, both the LLM and the BCL have a wide range of different options you can do. They're both 1 year taught master's courses. So there are some subtle differences between the two in terms of how the course is delivered and in the kind of range of courses you might find in the different places. So as I've been at both of them are either going to like me or hate me when they watch this recording. So I'll try my best to be honest. The LLM in Cambridge, you might find yourself going along to more lectures, whereas the BCL is much more seminar-based. So the courses on the LLM in Cambridge have two models, Model A and Model B. Model A is predominantly lecture-driven. So you'll have now, they've shifted to 7 lectures a term and then 1 more interactive element of teaching, and that'll be supplemented by workshops. Model B is where you have a pre-record lecture plus a seminar discussion. So there is more kind of lecturing going on the Cambridge LLM than there is on the Oxford BCL. The Oxford BCL is seminar driven. You will get a reading list. You will have a 2-hour seminar. You'll do your reading, your turn, or will be discussed and there'll be a discussion. So there's slight differences in the way in which they teach. The LLM is supplemented by workshops, which are smaller groups, and they tend to be groups of somewhere between 7 and 12, and it's small interactive teaching. The BCL is supplemented by tutorials, and they are up to 5 in a small group. On the tutorials system in Oxford, you're normally asked or expected / required, depending on how kind of insistent your course leader is, of producing 4 essays. In Cambridge, it's 2. Okay, so there's some differences in terms of how much formative essay you might be required to do for each course and what feedback you get. In terms of examining and structure, the BCL is predominantly examined through closed book examinations, which have now moved to open book because we've gone online. So they're still determining whether it's going to be closed book or open book, the BCL as you go through, and it keeps changing in the light of changing from COVID and then changing back. So it's COVID-led, whereas the traditional has always been closed book examinations. In sub-FUSC, what? When you sit your exam, if it's a closed book exam in an exam hall in Oxford, you will be wearing a particular outfit, okay? A dark suit, a white shirt, a blouse, a bow tie, bringing your waterboard with you and a gown. And please get black socks or stockings and black shoes. Then check. Not terribly, in case you're wondering about, are they doing searches? So they go in. No. But they do keep an eye on you, and you'll get a little note saying, why are you wearing orange socks? So, you know, they just take them very seriously in Oxford. Whereas Cambridge's exam system, the LLM, is slightly more diverse. So there is the ability on the LLM to do examinations for the courses you choose, Some courses also allow you to do an essay in lieu of the exam. So there's a little bit more variety in assessment methods. Both allow you to do a dissertation. If you do a BCL dissertation, then instead of having 4 options with an exam, you have 3 options and a dissertation. In the LLM, you can also do a dissertation. There's a special public law option where you do a more overseen kind of system of a dissertation where you go along to seminars, people discuss them, but you can also do a dissertation in lieu of one of your papers. So it's all a bit different. The BCL dissertation is more structured, whereas the LLM has slightly less oversight if you're doing essays or a dissertation in lieu of an exam. Unless you do a public law seminar, which has more oversight. It's all a bit of information overload, I know, but it's just to try and give you some idea of the subtle differences between the different courses. If there's anything in terms of a bias towards slightly more or slightly fewer courses, there's probably slightly more international law courses at Cambridge than there are in Oxford, and slightly more private, including the flagship restitution course that everyone seems to feel they have to do on the BCL at the BCL. And the joke, which you'll probably get told off to say, which is not true, but which is said by people, I heard it not at Cambridge, is that apparently BCL stands for bloody crap life and LLM stands for lots of lazy moments. This is a joke. It is not true. Both of the courses are tough, okay? They're not an easy ride, regardless of whether you're going to do the LLM at Cambridge or the BCL at Oxford. It is tough. It is intensive because they're used to small terms with lots of reading in those small terms and times to catch up over the vacation. So whichever one you go to, it will be intensive. It will require a lot of self-study and self-motivation, but it will be incredibly rewarding. You'll get lots of really good feedback and discussions, not just from those giving the courses, but also from the other people you'll meet on your course, because both attract really, really great law graduate students. So you get a very good atmosphere and discussion going on. In terms of the progression from both up to either your DPhil at Oxford or PhD in Cambridge is not automatic. You have to apply again, okay? So you go, do your LLM or BCL, and if you want to stay on to do a PhD or DPhil, you apply again. And there's nothing to stop you doing the LLM or BCL and then swapping to the other place for the PhD or the DPhil, or applying to both. Okay, in fact, most do. They'll do BCL and LLM and then apply to a PhD at both Oxford and Cambridge to see where they get in and to see where they're going to get funding. So it seems to be the standard element of progression. And this takes place quite early. So you're looking towards the end of your first term, you're putting your application for your PhD or DPhil. Now, obviously, in both of them, there is the ability to do dissertation option and then use that as a springboard for the project you want to do for your PhD or DPhil. Both of them are going to depend on giving you a place not just on how good you are, but also, is there a supervisor that can supervise you effectively? Okay, so it's going to depend on supervisor availability as well as how good you are, which is why most apply to both, because there's no real way of knowing how many people anyone is currently supervising. So in case you're wondering, I currently have 9 PhD students, okay, which is a lot, but I normally have a turnover of 2 to 3 new students every year, whereas others might only have 1 every year. So it's going to completely depend on who's available, how many PhD students they have, are they going on sabbatical, which is not in your control. So it's best to apply to both and see where you end up. There'll be different funding availabilities at both as well. So apply to both, apply for funding, because that will probably be more likely to dictate where you go than, if you're incredibly lucky, you've got nothing for both and you can choose, which is fantastic. But it's best to apply to both and see you end up on the basis of funding opportunities, supervision availability, and how it's working. Both will give you a really good PhD/DPhil. And in terms of the specific kind of communities you'll find, I've already said that Oxford has the biggest. there are more people doing a PhD there than there are at Cambridge. Cambridge's PhD community is relatively small. It's probably about a third that of the people at Oxford. Okay, and that has relative advantages and disadvantages. You're smaller, so you tend to know everybody more effectively, but it means because you're smaller, there might not be as many of you in similar areas who can then support each other, and they might not have the same discussion group structure. So in Cambridge, discussion groups tend to be organised by research centres in different areas, and there'll be various academics giving presentations, possibility of PhD students giving presentations, and also an organised system of presenting seminars through the PhD programme on your research in progress. In Oxford, you tend to find students are quite proactive in organising discussion groups in their areas because there's more of them, and there tends to be sort of more and more an opportunity that students organise to present research in progress rather than relying on more faculty organised events. But other than that, it's pretty much the same wherever you go. The only other broader community differences, Cambridge, there is a kind of common room that PhD students and faculty members share. So on the rare occasion when a faculty member is in the faculty, because both Oxford and Cambridge are college-based rather than faculty-based, you could just be having a cup of coffee and find someone who happens to be working in your area sat also having a cup of coffee. And it's okay for you to say, hello, I'm working in your area. And you'll find if they'll start talking to you. And you'll get to know faculty members other than your supervisor through that system. Cambridge also has an advisor system. So you have a supervisor and an advisor, both of whom you can talk to about your research project. Oxford doesn't have the same kind of system, but you tend to find that if you go to discussion groups, which happen quite frequently, you'll bump into somebody in your area and they'll talk to you and you tend to meet them that way instead. So there's both have opportunities for you to meet faculty members who aren't your supervisor and get to know them and get to talk to them, as well as through faculties, colleges provide that opportunity as well. So both have a kind of really good community. If I'm talking much wider elements, Oxford is bigger than Cambridge. That might influence you if you're used to big cities. I used to joke that Oxford is more like a city and Cambridge is more like a village because it's smaller. Both get you to London very quickly. So if you need to escape to a big city, you can get to London very quickly from either Oxford or Cambridge. It's easy to get to Heathrow from Oxford than it is from Cambridge, in case that is influencing you when you land. It's quite a trek to get from Heathrow to Cambridge, but it's easy to get to Oxford from Heathrow. They've got very good bus service that works on a regular basis. Yeah, I'm trying to be honest about all the different factors we might need here. Both get very busy and full of tourists. So it's one of the things I found very different about Canberra is wandering around thinking, where is everyone? Where did they go? So whereas Oxford, or Cambridge, you go out into the main centre, it's like people everywhere. You get lots of visitors, lots of language students over the summer, and also lots of students. So they're very big student communities as well. They're very much both of them university towns. That kind of element of having lots of students. They both have more than one university in cities. So you get a lot of students and lots of activities going on. So I probably bored you to death with different aspects of how the courses work and how you might progress and some of the similarities and differences between the two. So I will stop and let you fire questions at me.
Thank you so much, Alison. I couldn't have put everything better myself, and I hope that they're paying you extra from both Oxford and Cambridge to be spreading the good word around the world.
I should have thought of that.
Yes, absolutely. Look, let's open for questions. And as I say, I'm happy to take questions as well, because unlike Alison, I went to Cambridge from New Zealand, from the Antipodes. So I have a bit of a perspective of how it is to come from this side of the world to go to the UK to Cambridge and what that might involve. But let's open for questions. Should you have any? Yes.
How much discretion do you have in terms of what you actually study in the master's program?
Okay. Both of them have quite a lot of discretion, so you can completely choose which 4 subjects you want to study. There are some provisos to that. So there are some BCL courses that become incredibly popular, and occasionally they might have to introduce a cap. So if there is a cap, then it becomes an element of you saying, well, this is my first choice. If I don't get in, here's another choice I'd like to have instead. It's not always the case. It depends on how many people are available and who else applies, but there is the possibility of a course being capped on the BCL, which is not the case to date on the LLM, but obviously if certain courses become very, very popular, you might find the same thing. So apart from that proviso, you can normally choose whatever courses you want. We try our very best on both the BCL and the LLM to timetable things to avoid standard clashes. So it might be that a incredibly theoretical jurisprudence class clashes with something like advanced tax law, because we think you might be unlikely that both do the same. And you might be the person who wants to do both of them. Normally in those situations, if we can, we'll think if there's can be any kind of leeway to accommodate your ability to do both. So both try and let you choose as much as we can in a way that gives you a full range of choices across them without dictating any course at all.
My experience is that Cambridge at least was incredibly accommodating.
Yeah.
Not just for me, but I mean generally across the board. It's not the case that you feel limited or cajoled in some way because of formalistic requirements.
Yes, absolutely.
I think you can, as an LLM student at Cambridge, choose to do something like a specialization, have public law courses. But I personally didn't. I was at liberty, like everyone else, to choose diversity of courses, and that really helped me actually.
Yeah.
So you're really free to choose and direct your own degree, and the faculty is very, very helpful in that regard. You're in safe hands in that way.
And you'll get advice from your college as well as people in the faculty you can talk to help you choose courses. There is some leeway as well. So what you tend to find on both the BCL and the LLM is the first couple of weeks, every course is inundated because everyone's trying different courses. Thinking you don't want to do this one or that one before you finalize your choice. So there's some leeway to try, see which ones you prefer, and then finalize your choices towards the middle of your first term. There's also the ability in Cambridge to audit a course, which is where you turn up, but you're not going to be examined in it. So if you really wanted to do something and wanted to do 5, you can at least sort of sit in on those seminars and listen to the discussion, even if you know you're not going to be examined on it. You can sort of do that on the BCL, but there isn't the same official system. You have to ask the course leader if that's okay, and normally going to say yes.
Any other questions? Are you going to?
Oh, excellent. There's a question over Zoom from Katie. Thank you. She was wondering what pathways, if any, are there for graduates who were not in the top 10% of their LLB cohort or didn't graduate with first class honours.
I would love to say come to us from Cambridge. The answer is you won't get in. And I have to be honest and say, sadly, that the first is you will not get an offer without first Oxford or Cambridge. But there are other places that have very, very good LLM courses in England that are also worth considering. So the London universities have very good, long-established master's courses. And you don't necessarily need a first to get onto those. So if you really do want to do an LLM in England, you can look at, so there's UCL, King's College London, Queen Mary College London, and you also find, if you're London-based, that you can do your LLM at one of the universities and find out about things going on at the other universities and go to those as well. So, and then there are lots of other universities in the UK that would require a trust. Sorry. I feel like I'm having to apologize. You can't come to us. It's just because they are so competitive.
Another question. I'm not a university medalist. Do I stand a chance of getting into Oxbridge? And better still, do I have any chance of getting a scholarship, which I would need to take up an offer in?
Okay. So you're going to have to translate a university medalist to me.
Top of the year, university gives the medal top of the year. I guess, no, you don't need it. There have been many students, obviously, who have been medalists, who have not been medalists, who have gotten in. It's simply first class honours, which is the equivalent here, in your undergraduate law degree. One thing that this might not apply so much to Oxford and Cambridge, but at the same time as I was applying for the LLM there, I was applying for the states, Ivy Leagues. Some of them, so this might not be the case for Oxford, require you or offer you the ability to demonstrate that you've published something. It doesn't have to be massive or major, but at least something that has come out from a junior person in the profession, or you as a recently graduated LLB student. If you're interested in that, my own view is that it can't harm you. If you think that I'm not a university medalist, here's my first, but nevertheless it's highly internationally competitive, the more things you have in your arsenal, it might help you. So I don't know about Alice.
Yeah, I mean that could, you wouldn't need to be medalist, so you don't need to top your year or top particular group in order to get in. Yes, you would need the first, and it's normally the top 10% equivalent if you don't have first, or just because it's competitive. In terms of the funding, again, different funding bodies rely on different things. So some are going to be pure academic merit. And again, that's not going to be, I must be a medalist in order to compete. But obviously, if everyone else applying for that scholarship is and you're not, in that highly unlikely scenario, then it might make a difference. But they'll also look at other things, and specific scholarships are meant to promote other things. And those scholarships can look at how well-rounded are you. So you might not be a medalist, but you have a first and you've been highly involved in a legal clinic, or you've been involved in community work somewhere, or you are very good sporting commitments to university. Those things show you're a well-rounded individual, and some scholarships are looking more for that. And also particularly things like leadership potential, than they are necessarily pure academic merit. So look at the different scholarships carefully. Some are very academic, some are looking for other factors as well.
Scholarships, I would say, don't limit yourself in terms of the market in which you're looking. You should research what the UK offers, what the UK government offers, what Oxford and Cambridge themselves offer, what the colleges offer, and then what your own governments, Australia, in my case, New Zealand might offer, ANU might offer, the British High Commission in Australia or in New Zealand. That was my part of my scholarship for the LLM, other parts of the New Zealand government. My PhD was funded by a college. You've got to be very taking the initiative, but the information is all there. You won't have trouble accessing the process and just, doing the process. It requires a lot of time, but it's not hidden away. And there are many opportunities there for you. And as Alison says, you don't need to be a medalist by any means, and you shouldn't be discouraged if you're not.
I don't know if any of my current PhD students are. Never asked. So that's how you don't need to be. It's big evidence. You had a question? Yeah.
What role do the letters of recommendation play in the admissions process?
Okay. They play more of a role than they would do necessarily in so the way undergrad works in England is you have to do a kind of similar thing. We tend not to put as much emphasis at that stage. When it comes to LLM and PhD, they can play quite a role. But again, it's one of those where we're looking at, do we have evidence of the reality of your predicted degree from your reference, as well as specific evidence in your reference that shows that you do have these skills. So you tend to find we get quite used to writing these references, academics generally, not just in the UK, because obviously a lot of you will go through this process and your academic advisors are used to writing them, or used to setting them out to make a strong case to show that you've got good analytical skills, and they'll give an example that you've got good legal research skills, and they'll give an example you've got some elements of having, being self-motivated and applying things, and they'll give examples of this. So they do play quite a role, but again, it's supplementing your academic potential and helping provide further evidence of that academic potential. It's the academic potential exemplified by your degree results and this reference that will get you in.
But there, yeah. Give us some insight about the JD@ANU plus BCL at Oxford program.
The JD at ANU versus
Not versus. I do think ANU offers this program.
a JD. Yes, that's different. JD is it's different though. It's not solely graduate. You can take it at undergraduate level. It sort of merges between. So,
But there's a program at ANU
yes,
that allows you to do JD here for like 2.5 years,
Yes.
and then continuing to do a BCL at Oxford.
a particular transition.
Not transition. I think
it's a 2.5 year commitment here at the ANU for your JD, and then it's I think the full year commitment at, for example, the BCL, and you come out with your JD and your BCL.
And your BCL. I assume that you would still go through a process to be admitted into the BCL. Oxford does not
No,
adjust. It's yeah.
That's right. Basically, it's the same admission.
The discretion's on the ANU side, not on that.
On the Oxford side, yes, I can look further into that for you. I think the student administration will have a wealth of information on that particular arrangement.
must have happened after I left.
yes.
So I'm not aware of that.
Yes, within the last
So you
5
need-
years. Yes, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, thank you, Alison and Joanna. Joanna, you mentioned before you were choosing between Ivy League or Oxbridge. I was wondering what swayed your decision to go to UK to US.
My gut. Go with your gut. Look, it was a highly interesting process applying for Ivy League. So whichever of those colleges, as they're called in America, offer law, it's a far more welcoming process applying for Oxford and Cambridge. You feel more at home in that process. You've got all sorts of filters to go through and even pay to apply for places like Harvard, Columbia, Yale, and Stanford, which I was. Look, if you're fortunate enough to get the offers, then you're in a position to choose, and that's when you can, I guess, listen to your gut. I had gotten in touch with professors within the field of my interest at both in the States and in Oxford and Cambridge before I applied for the master's level. So I was confident that in each of those faculties, I would have someone that I could learn from or who would be in a position to teach me in that master's program. When you come to the stage of choosing, you have to see who best fits what your interests are. Who has been the most communicative, the most welcoming? Then you get to research more about the place where you're going to, where you might feel more comfortable. You might want to think about more distant future in terms of what you want to do with your degree and the options that are open for you in the different institutions. So you have to broaden your questions, I think, if you have the choice, if you have the offers. I went with the UK because it felt, I don't know, more comfortable, but then also felt like it would most align with my interests in public law and law and information media law than what was being marketed necessarily. And for example, in Stanford, there's very, very strong information law area in Stanford, for example, but they are very, very focused on tech and applied. But whereas the impression I got was the case from Oxford and Cambridge, it was based more on law and theory, and I was able to combine that where I went in the UK. But that's just my experience. Go with your guts when you come to that stage, because otherwise you don't want to have gone somewhere for different reasons and sort of wasted 9 months or a year. It is going to be 9 months and a year of your life. You will step out of your career if you already have one, if you were a practice before you went. So treat it also as something that you want to enjoy, not just at making an effort. Any other questions or online?
Yeah, a couple of, did you want to go first?
Yeah, so it's for the PhD or philosophy, my understanding is the application process includes a research proposal.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a broad question, but do you have any sort of just generalized kind of tips or suggestions on how you approach that?
So my main tip is to make sure you thought very carefully about what question you want to be thinking about. So we'll get quite a lot of proposals that will be along the lines of, I really like constitutional and I would like to research this area further. And you just think, no, that's not going to work. So think very carefully about what specifically you want to research and why. Think carefully about what your question is. Also think carefully about, are you going to be looking at this from one jurisdiction or are you going to be comparative? If so, which ones are you going to compare and why? Are you going to be more doctrinal or are you going to be more theoretical? Why? And how are you going to look at it? And so you really do need to be thinking quite carefully about why I want to look at a particular question and how I think I'm going to go about it. You don't need the answer. If you had the answer, you wouldn't be doing the research because you'd already know the answer. But you do need to think carefully about what it is you want to be looking at and why and how you're going to go about doing it. And those are going to be better research proposals than research proposals that are a bit vague, a bit broad, and which don't necessarily explain clearly what it is you're looking at and why. So take time to think about what your proposal is going to be on. Don't worry that you're then going to be completely and utterly committed to that, because everyone's research proposal will change as you carry out your research, might follow different directions later on, but at least have a good idea at this stage of a question you want to explore.
And what gives you a very good grounding for that is the course Laws 2248, which is research, legal research and writing, a newly made compulsory course for undergraduates at this faculty, which I teach and will be convening next year. And we absolutely do train you to think in that way. You're approaching a research topic. You need a question. You need an issue. You need to isolate that. And then you need to provide a justification for the different reasons why you will be using this methodology or that. But yes, it is quite a rapid process. I mean, I arrived in Cambridge studying the LLM, excellent, finding my bearings, and then, here's the deadline for the PhD application. And so you will be engaging with the professors in the faculty to get a feel for whether you're ready to think about a PhD proposal in that particular area. For example, I remember in my own experience, I was interested in two different areas. I ended up going for one. But the other area was completely distinct. It was international criminal law. And I remember testing my ideas with a professor. And the most sound advice I got and most useful advice was, in reality, it's a point of interest. Excellent. But do you have a law PhD proposal as opposed to something else? And that's, essentially what you have to demonstrate in your proposal. So, you'll have the resources around you to be able to harness them and produce something. But as Alison said, it has to have certain essentials. Yeah. There was a question online.
Yes. Can you apply for both BCL and LLM simultaneously? I know undergrads can't apply for both unis.
You can. Yeah, you're right. The undergraduate can't. BCL one.
Well, routinely. I did, and most people from Australia and New Zealand will. And then they'll choose. Yeah.
Another question is, would you recommend these courses for someone who has already been practicing for a couple of years, under 10? And what are your views on weighing up the advantages, for example, furthering studies versus disadvantages, for example, potentially pausing a developing career?
That's interesting. I practiced for almost 3 years before going to do the LLM. It is very, very common, in fact, more common than not, that people from Australia, New Zealand, Canada will have practiced for a couple of years before applying for LLM or BCL at Oxford and Cambridge. That gives you the ability to get some referees who are not just academics who might be able to support you. It gives you the opportunity to engage with your colleagues here in practice who have most likely, some of them, also done the LLM and BCL. And it's depending on what you want to do in terms of your own career. I don't think taking 9 months out or a year to do a master's level will stagnate your practice. That's not how the market works in my experience and what I know now. the elite firms or whoever, whichever practice areas in Australia and New Zealand, it's valued. The connections that you'll make at Oxford or Cambridge, the sort of education that you will get, the rigor, the discipline, everything is valued. So you'll have to, obviously talk with your own firm. If you're going to the bar, you'll have to decide whether you want to do pupillage, the equivalent articles, whichever jurisdiction you're in, before or after you take your time to do the master's courses at Oxford or Cambridge. But it's not a disadvantage to your developing career because of of where you'll be going and the value that you'll get, from the degree, but also from your experience there. Yeah, that's a good question.
I didn't practice, so I can't really draw on that side, but I can confirm that on both BCL and LLM, we do get a lot of people who have qualified or practiced for a few years and then gone on to do a master's course then. And some will go back to practice. Some will then decide to perhaps go to an academic route. Some might change practice. So sometimes you'll have people who practice as a solicitor, go on to do the BCL, and then move over to become barristers. So the options are there, the career paths are there. I don't think it restricts you at all.
Any other questions? The bus routes from Oxford.
There are two competing companies that are it's very exciting, the bus route from Heathrow to Oxford.
Yeah, I just know what obviously like undergrad and postgrad can be a little bit different, but would you say that it's still quite fun, like studying postgrad? Like, does everyone take it really serious? Like, oh, we took it seriously, but like,
Goodness me, but it's not 11. I don't know what that was, the BCR slaves in the BCR.
No, look, it was high pressure and intensive, and I imagine it is in the BCL, but it is absolutely fun. And you're all there because you've made an incredible effort to get in. You can't do that without enjoying the law academic pursuits, and you're all in it together. And that really is felt, regardless of what you're doing, regardless of which country you're from, regardless, whether you come from a practice background or an academic background. I like to say this because it's sort of contrary to the I think, received wisdom about Oxford and Cambridge. It's an incredible leveler because you're all in it together. It seriously does not, and I did not experience a single moment of, someone is more this or less that, and therefore they feel excluded. Because you're all in it together, you've all made that effort to get in and been successful in getting in. It is necessarily enjoyable. Of course, when exams come, I mean, you do feel pressured. You do have to work, especially if you've gotten a conditional offer for a PhD that's conditional on getting a first in the LLM. Obviously there's a healthy dose of pressure there, but it's not meant to. And I don't know who's experienced it as being, horrific and not fun at all.
It's really up to you is the best way of thinking about it, just like it's right. And just like any form of legal studies, if it's so much fun you're not doing the work, that's going to be a bit of a problem. And then you'll find that your people looking after you in your college will take you to one side and suggest that maybe you ought to visit a library occasionally and maybe turn up for seminars. But in both of them, there is a good ability to have a good balance. It's really up to you to make that. You do have to accept that both are quite intense, not just because they're asking you to do a lot of self-study, but also because the terms are so much shorter. But that comes with the element of accepting that you will be doing some catching up in the break. So take that as a given and recognize that you might not be able to do everything, but that's okay. You do what you can, you get what you can out of the seminars, you make notes as to which bits you want to revisit, and you go away and revisit them, and you'll do better organizing your time properly to take advantage of all the other things that are going on. So all the other activities, the talks, things in other faculties, the sports in your college, the amateur dramatics in your college, the music in your college, so you name it, you can do anything. I mean, there are so many different societies. Obviously, Yellen is going to laugh like, you have to join the Doctor Who Society. It's compulsory. because my office has Doctor Who memorabilia in it. So I never felt remember. But no, I'm not the founding member of Panopticon. I'm sorry. It's going a long time before I got that. I am not that old. I am very old. I did do the BCL before you lot would have been born, but I'm not that old. So there is time to do a lot of things, but be sensible and balance it effectively. And there is that sense of community, lots of other things going on, and other things that you can do. And the vacation is also there for you to wind down as well as catching up. And you're in a different country, you're in a new area, you can explore that country, explore the area. For some of you, it might be the first time in which you get over to somewhere where you can explore Europe as well. There are those opportunities to do that on both courses, as long as you're sensible. So it's not all workaholic, but it is quite intense.
Do some catch-up meeting on tax law on the Amalfi Coast.
Yeah, which we people do. I mean, I read this on the train to Scotland. Okay, that was a lot.
Kind of bouncing off that question, is it possible to have a job while you're there? Is it not recommended?
Why would you? I mean, why would you? Officially, no.
And you have to, you'll be, I mean, look, you might be a UK citizen, in which case, whatever, but visas usually restrict you, even on the PhD. You will be allowed, and maybe you might be encouraged to take on little jobs like being a supervisor or a tutor or admissions interviews or whatever. But there will be those restrictions on you. But then if you're doing the LLM BCL, why would you not?
The LLM and BCL is very, very, very strongly advised that you don't, just because of how much work you're going to do. Now, does that mean we will deliberately go around and police you and remove you if we think you're working? Well, no, but we will very, very strongly advise you not to. Because it's so intense, it's really going to be very, very difficult to juggle a job and BCL or the LLM. PhD is different. PhD in your first year of your PhD, both will say you shouldn't be working. We'll check to make sure you're not, because you should be spending your time in your first year. In your second and third year on your PhD, you are encouraged to do things like provide small group teaching, which gives you the teaching experience if you want to move on to be an academic, as well as your research experience. There'll also be research assistant opportunities at both of them while you're doing your PhD. There'll also be other opportunities to do things like help with admissions, which can earn some money. So once it gets to your second and third year of PhD studies, then yes, but there are opportunities to do some work, and we are encouraging you to try and do the things that will help you move on to your next career as well. But your first year of PhD, strongly persuaded. You'll find with both Oxford and Cambridge, strongly persuaded is as close as it gets to banning. Yes. It's very,
but in your best interest.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
It aligns. It aligns with your best interest. They're not there to enforce sort of anything that's sort of, right. There is sort of the options. If you want to go to the bar, there's something called the Pegasus, I think, which applies to students from Australia and New Zealand, I think, still. That might sort of be an option for you during the break between one of the semesters. But that's during a break. That's a particular, you're not sort of going to be going out there into the marketplace seeking a job at the same time while you're doing the LLM. Yeah.
It's hard to self-fund yourself with the small amount of work you could do.
Yes.
In order to get, it's not really feasible to do that. Yes.
I'm just wondering how comprehensive like scholarships generally are, like given that it's not advisable that would work.
Yeah.
Does it cover like little costs as well as tuition costs?
It depends on the scholarship. So full scholarships they'll cover tuition and will cover living costs. So I was very fortunate. I had a scholarship from the AHRC in the UK, which covered my tuition and covered living, which you then supplement with your small amounts of doing teaching the second, third year, and it was feasible to then be able to concentrate on doing small amounts and getting the research. When that's not the case, you tend to find people are applying for a combination of scholarships to get additional bits of money. both Oxford and Cambridge have supplementary scholarships to try and help people who might have tuition fee only. Then there'll be supplementary scholarships in colleges and across faculties to help give you the money. So we know it's not easy. We try our best to fund as many people as we possibly can. And both universities are constantly fundraising to get as many scholarships funded as they can because they recognise how hard it is.
Any questions online? Excellent. Yes.
Is finding a particular discipline area useful? I mean, of course, you have to look for a PhD level or DPhil, but in applying for the BCL LLM, is it useful in focusing your application, or should you go on a pick the BCL?
Oh, either's fine, to be honest. So I did on the BCL jurisprudence, comparative human rights, competition law, and intellectual property law.
Very good.
They're like, what on earth were you thinking, you mad woman? And there was logic behind this. The logic behind this was because when I applied for the BCL, I didn't know whether I was going to use this as a springboard to then go to practice, or whether I was going to become an academic. If I was going to go in the academic side, I was very much interested in public law theory. And if I was going to become a practitioner, I was interested in the crossover areas between competition law and intellectual property. So that was motivating my choices. That then did give me the option of I could have gone on to do a PhD in those areas I'd done on BCL. So I could have had competition, IP, jurisprudence, or comparative human rights. I ended up doing theory and human rights PhD. But I could have done something else. I could have done something completely different. I could have thought, actually, quite fancy picking up tax law, which I did in undergrad, because I've picked up on something from one aspect of BCL that makes me then want to do an aspect of tax law. So it's as long as you can give a good research proposal, they're not going to tie you into why do you not do that on the BCL or LLM. The advantage it gives you is doing those subjects then will give you more of an ability to find a research question because you're starting to study them at advanced level.
It's more with the Ivy Leagues that you need to be clear at your application stage for the LLMs that you're particularly interested in this area of law. You've contacted this professor. This is what you want to do with your LLM, and so on and so on. It doesn't harm you to explain that in the sort of substantive proposal part for your application to the BCL and LLM. You won't be held to it if in the end one of your courses is IP or international criminal law. Yeah. Yes, one final question probably. Yeah.
Do you have any idea or estimates on the proportion of the cohort that managed to get full scholarships or partial scholarships?
Oh, that's tricky. It varies from year to year. So it's hard to predict because obviously some of the scholarships are not Oxford and Cambridge specific. So things like the Rhodes Scholarship, so Commonwealth scholarships aren't Oxford and Cambridge specific. So that's what makes it hard to predict. My guess is a good probably 25 to 50% are full scholarships. Because obviously Oxford and Cambridge are competitive universities, scholarships are competitive, so we do tend to have more people on full scholarship.
Great. I think we can leave it there. Thank you. Thank you very much, Alison, for your generosity.